Theme song for the Gear Podcast. How's it going, Uncle Leon?
Bloody lovely, mate. It's good to be back. We've had a little bit of a break. I've been away. You've been unwell.
Boo. Yep, it's all happened, mate. You like this knee? It's back. Another episode.
The knee returns.
How about you? You wearing shorts today?
100% shorts today,
Shorts,
mate. It's
boys.
February in Perth.
Yeah. I love it, mate. I feel weird that I wear shorts sometimes and you don't. It feels like it should be the reverse. But, mate, it's been an eventful couple of weeks, I would say. We can talk about it a little bit. How are you feeling right now? Feeling pretty good?
Feeling pretty good. I've been on a video making binge because maybe by the time this comes out, I will be in New Zealand, touch wood, fingers crossed, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Everything goes well. So prepping for that. And yeah, just being away from home means there's a few sort of product demos that I've promised people that I will make. So I've had to make those and yeah, just a few other things. We were away the weekend before last. It's currently the 27th of Feb. So 10 days ago, we did Glamfest in Melbourne, which was awesome. Then I came back and did 2 theatre shows, and then we did Rottnest on the Sunday. So that was an intense week. And yeah, aside from that, had a couple of gigs last weekend, another double banger. And yeah, I'm just currently trying to find cases for everything for when I fly. I just want to make sure all my stuff is well protected. And yeah, look, mate, J-Car couldn't deliver the goods today, so I might have to go up to Bunnings later.
Oh, mate, go to the church, hey? What sort of case do you need? What do you need it for? Pedalboard?
Oh, just some. Yeah, I want something for my FM9 because I've got cases for it. I've got multiple cases that fit it, but I want one of those plastic molded ABS foam things. Yeah, fake Pelican.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look. We're not quite there in our careers, Troy, where we're paying Pelican case money for anything to put our gear in. Let's face it. Yep. But aside from that, how are you? You got a little bit crook? Have you been busy?
Mate, it's just been... I had COVID 2 weeks ago from today, two and a bit weeks ago. So that wasn't too fun. But I'm okay now. It sort of hit me... I think I was a bit unwell the day before I tested. I tested on a Saturday and I was negative. I did a gig Saturday night. And it was awful. Like, I was really unwell. And then I woke up the next morning, absolutely, like, when you test and then the line happens as the test is, you've got to wait 15 minutes. It just happened as soon as it went past the line. So that wasn't very good. But, yeah, man, like, now that it's all happened and I think, like, the Sunday was really bad. And then it was probably not too bad after that. And then the whole house got it off me. But yeah, now that it's all been through, I think I'm back to normal. It took a little while to feel normal, which I'm sure everybody has had it, or just about everybody in the world's had it by now. So you're kind of the feeling. And I know it's different for everybody. For me, it was, apart from the one day, it just was this feeling of like my eyes were not running at the same speed as my head. So I'd like turn my head to look at something and then I'd like, oh, everything feels a bit slow and weird. And that feeling took a little while to disappear, and I think, as of like now, I feel pretty good. I went to the gym last night again, so hopefully back to
that low frame rate thing.
Low frame rate indeed. So yeah, man, it's all happening. So what's exciting is I've run this mic through a way more expensive signal chain to get it into the computer right now. I've got some compression happening as it's going down. Yeah. Is it any louder coming into your head, into your ears at the moment, or is it about the same?
A little bit. It's quite enjoyable.
Oh, hey,
and
mate.
I mean, tell the public what you're using, Troy.
Well, actually, this is probably uncommon for a podcast, but firstly, I've been using this mic for a little while because it was handy and it was lighter than my SM7. This is a Biodynamic M88 with a windsock on it because, got to get rid of the P-pops. Running into a Daking Audio 500 series mic preamp. And then running into a Purple Action compressor, which probably overkill for a little voiceover mic, but I happen to have some gear that I haven't really been using that much, so why not set it up? And I can see the lights just going as I'm talking, and I'm looking at the compression lights as I go, yeah! It's really satisfying to see it compress in hardware.
That compressor is taking care of business, mate.
Mate, TCB, just like Elvis. It's a beautiful thing. You know what else I've done? I don't know if you can tell, but I've moved this room around ever so slightly. I went through in my COVID days, DAZE, you got to have something to watch. You got to have something to keep your brain occupied. And after my initial day, so here's what happened as well, Uncle Leon, is like I thought, well, I'm isolated for a few days from my family. I thought to myself, this is terrible for my partner.
This is an opportunity.
Yeah, my partner has to look after children by herself for a few days, so that's awful. And I felt really bad about that, particularly when they're playing up. But on the plus side, I'm by myself in our bedroom, and I can just watch television all day, no parents. So I watched a couple of TV shows. I was like, oh, there's a new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm out. I'm going to watch that.
Oh.
I'm like 3 or 4 seasons behind as it is. I can watch everything. Like, what a beautiful time to be alive and have COVID. Of course, on the Tuesday, my partner then tested positive, and then my holiday was over. However, within a bit of this time frame, I just got onto watching some acoustics videos, and that was really fun. So I moved my speakers back against the wall, and then consequently, I've moved my desk and all my equipment forward a little bit, and it sounds better in this room, which is awesome.
Nice.
So a little bit more space in here now as well, and I think on the camera it looks a little bit nicer. I think it's framed better. So anyway,
Yeah, you're looking good.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate that. Cheers, Uncle Leon. Happy February 27th to you.
What you sipping on there, Troy? You want to tell us about the delicious coffee that you're drinking in Perth, Western Australia?
Well, the thing is, Uncle Leon, any coffee you drink in Perth, Western Australia will just give you the biggest smile you've ever had in your life. This one is a large flat white from Green Street Cafe just around the corner. That is my midday coffee place. I've had a coffee from Little Nola Cafe in Nollamara near my house. That's my morning coffee. And then my afternoon coffee will be from Sugar and Nice, depending on what time we finish this. So
you got a nice little coffee power trio going on.
Got a little schedule, mate. So that's what happens on the Tuesdays to the Fridays. Of course, on Monday when I teach in Leederville, I go to 2 different places during the day because I'm there from 10 o'clock onwards. But today that's what's on the cards. You know what I've been drinking a little bit recently, mate? This will probably make you really unhappy, but we got an espresso machine now. So weekends, just have a couple of espressos, quick and easy, no problem. However,
it's totally fine.
It's completely fine. Got a milk frother, that's cool. But here's what I noticed, Uncle Leon. So Sunday, my family came around. I made pancakes for my whole family, which was great. Have I made you pancakes before?
No.
I'm gonna remind me something. You come around
all right.
on a Sunday morning,
and then I'll make you pancakes.
Oh, is this how it's going to be?
This is how it's going to be,
Uncle Leon.
Because I feel like there's definitely some shared expertise here in the pancake department.
I've got pancakes sussed. I'm really happy with how I deliver a stack of pancakes to another person. I'd say it's of the skills I have, which are very limited. It's one of the top 3 to 4.
There you go.
I'd say my pancake skills and my steak skills are similar. My steak skills have gone down a tiny bit, and my pancake skills have increased a little bit. Anyway, on this day, I had people around. Instead of going for my normal morning coffee at a cafe, I just made a couple of espressos during the day, maybe 2, and by like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was asleep. I just couldn't. I had no energy. I had nothing going on. There was not enough caffeine flowing through my veins. So I think that's a little bit of an issue with it. Whereas I was discussing this with someone last week. I'm probably having about 8 shots of coffee a day on average at the moment, maybe 7. I think that my Sunday caffeine intake of probably 2 shots of coffee just wasn't enough to really keep me sustained.
Yeah.
So
I used to teach a kid whose parents were. His dad was an engineer and his mum was an architect, and I'd go to their house to tutor this kid, and I was tutoring him maths of all things. Lovely, lovely family. And they would just say, look, we want to book you for 3 hours on a Saturday. You know, just come around, take as much time as you need, like sort this kid out. And, he was pretty bright. It was mostly just like, all right, cool, bro. Tell me about like your favorite, like LeBron James highlights and your sneaker collection. And then we'll do a bit of maths, and then you can rinse and repeat. And they'd often just like, they were Iranian, so they'd often make me Persian tea, and they'd invite me to stay for dinner and stuff like that. And I always remember this kid's dad saying to me, is like, yeah, my method, and this is like tried and tested, is like, during the week when I'm at work, I drink coffee, but on the weekend, I give my body a break. And be like, my wife, however, she has a problem. She's addicted. She has to have it every single day without fail. He's like, however, my method, I can, if I don't want to have a coffee on any given day, I feel like I've got that baked in. And I was like, that is such an engineer mindset to doing things. It's just like, well, the body is a meat machine, so I'll just treat it this way. And yeah, I sometimes think of that advice, but I literally have one a day in the morning, and maybe if I'm in struggle town or I need to get a lot of stuff done, I'll have a second one.
Well, you don't need it to survive, and you really treat the making of a coffee. It's a ritual for you, right?
Mate, the one I had this morning was it was the God shot. You know, it was just the 1 in 100 where you just get everything right. And I know tomorrow I won't be able to do it. But look, I'm sure this is the segue, Troy. This is how we want to get into this. And you made a really good point where if you think about the culture, especially online around coffee and food, you know, like you talk about like third wave coffee where there's been let's say the space has sort of exploded where there's a whole lot of interest in, you know, different techniques and applying like the scientific method to stuff to test it, and just like listening to voices from different backgrounds in particular has really been enabled by the interconnectivity of the world. You know, the internet has made a lot of things incredibly bad as well. You know, you just realize that like, you know, it games human psychology, sometimes in the best way, sometimes in the worst way. But you've got a little theory trickling around in the back of your head. I'm going to call it third wave gear culture to contrast with third wave coffee culture. But I'll let you lay it out. But I would just kind of say, you know, the reason it's third wave is the electric guitar becoming a thing is first wave. And then the customizing and modding of amplifiers, effects, and guitars in the late 70s to early 80s is second wave. And that kind of like, maybe we had the 2.5 wave in the 90s with like vintage gear somewhere in there. I'll call all of that second wave. So like Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good is first wave. Eddie Van Halen is the start of second wave, and maybe like second wave kind of ends with like the pod.
Okay.
Let's say that. And then you got this like lull, and now we're in like the third wave where like anyone who's slightly fluent with a little bit of knowledge can get on the internet and make claims and test them and present them to their audience. And yeah, it's the same time where like an idiot like me can make videos in a basement as Dave Friedman can make videos and share stuff about, you know, rigs and stuff like that. So I'll let you take it from here. What are your general thoughts, and what made you think of this?
Well, I think what made me think of this was, as you already said with coffee, like if you think about 15 years ago, there wasn't a culture surrounding like, okay, these are all of the different devices that you can purchase to make the perfect coffee. It didn't, like people weren't testing it, people weren't experimenting or whatever. I remember probably about 10, 12 years ago talking to a guy at a cafe, and he said, I have to get the water to 97.3 degrees to make the perfect coffee. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's ridiculous. But now that it feels stupid, but it also feels very common that someone's tested every degree and like minute interval between that to work out exactly how to make the perfect coffee. And it's not that expensive to do something like, well, I guess it is kind of expensive to get a kettle to like those temperature controlled things, but it's if you really want to like delve through not just forum posts and hearsay of what it takes for something to be great, then the testing is out there to do that. Another example would be barbecue, because I think the barbecue culture, like cooking a brisket, I remember the first time I tried to cook a brisket in like 2016, there wasn't a slew of videos online that I could watch to tell me exactly how to trim it. I remember looking at just a website, and it said cut here, here, here. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Now it's like I'll just watch Chud's Barbecue, and then I can watch the same video 17 times, like, you know, just replay it and watch him like, trim a brisket and explain exactly why it's important to do this and important to do that. Or even like, it's related, but like, you know, Nat's What I Reckon. Sometimes he does those videos. How much salt are you putting in? I don't know. Just put this much in. It's like, some things don't matter. It's like really important.
Season to taste.
Yeah, it's important when someone tells you when things are really important, and sometimes you obsess about things that aren't important. So, anyway,
I think the point of all these things is like the emphasis is on high quality. Like quality it being the best it can be is sort of the emphasis. It's not just like, well, you cook a brisket because that's widely available and cheap and contains nutrition. No, you're doing it because you want to make like the best, tastiest, barkiest, juiciest thing you can. You know, everything is around quality. Like the coffee thing, it's like, okay, you got to source good beans and you got to like, you know, do it in a way where the people growing the beans aren't being economically exploited. And, you know, there's this sort of web of interconnectivity where everything's about high quality and kind of improvement. And like, I don't want to use the word progress when you're talking about stuff that's like food, because that's a very, you know, well, obviously we've progressed the most because we're right now. I won't say that, but there is that similar thing now where it's like how to get the best tone, how to use, what's the best cable, what's the best digital modeler, what are the best tubes, what's the best way to bias your amp, what's the best way to do a Jose mod, you know? And there's people, you know, obviously the space we're in at the moment, there's people out there with like proper expertise and decades of experience just sharing this stuff for free, more or less. If you have an internet connection, you've got access to Headfirst amps or Psionic audio. And, you know, there's that I think the thing to point out as well is like this expertise has always been there. It's just the framework to present it and have it spread and be valued is probably what's new.
Yep.
It's not really that, you know, is coffee in Perth better than it was 15 years ago? Maybe not. It's, you know, you could still go and get an awesome coffee.
It'll still taste better
places.
than whatever you get from in Melbourne. So
exactly. There's another shot fired across the bow, or potentially New Zealand. We'll find out.
yeah. So
nevertheless,
anyway, so you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, nevertheless, you know, there is that the average civilian gear user or coffee drinker in this case, you know, they come in with a different set of assumptions now, right?
Yep. And yeah, it's I think like there's some examples of some stuff that has happened, like testing wise, and some of the hearsay and some of the bullshit that I think we can maybe discuss today in terms of what's been debunked or just general, like in the conversation now. A couple that spring to mind. So one to start with, this one in particular is certainly out of my knowledge base. So I'll just state it maybe, and then people can just debate it more in the comments. But surface mount components, like, and that one comes to mind because I think it was actually something on Gearspace I was reading recently where people were debating, it might have been a new mixing console. There was something about surface mount components within this device, and I'd love to buy it, but it's all surface mount stuff, and then I feel like if you were reading on a forum like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was the general consensus that like you cannot have a surface mount component within your device because it will clearly sound worse. When it's like, JHS, I think as one of the examples, a lot of like all those pedals, maybe it's all surface mount stuff these days because, it's reliable to do. It's all, I guess, put together by robots and stuff. Because the components are so much smaller, they can, place them in better ways for noise and whatever. It's like the old knowledge is just, it's false. So get out of here.
Yeah. And look, to play devil's advocate, if they were saying, I don't want to buy something that's surface mount because it's more difficult for me as a user to service, hey, you might have a point there. You probably have a very good point. But if it's for some superior tonal quality,
yeah,
probably not. Another good one would probably be something that springs to mind as well. I still see this a lot, talking about like the weight of guitar hardware. Like I feel like 10, 15 years ago, everything had to be lightweight, and people have come back like the other way and been like, no, you want like solid brass and all this kind of thing. Again, something I don't really know anything about, but that's one that springs to mind where does something sound better than the other or not? You can test that. Or like tone wood,
yep,
right? That whole thing that I don't want to touch with a 20-foot pole. I'll just throw it out there. That's another one that, the the forum, the Harmony Central consensus and the current consensus probably disagree.
Yep.
You know, another one, vintage amps. Like, I always remember it's like, oh, you got a Plexi, you got to mod it. You need more gain. A JCM 800, you got to mod it. You got to do these things. And, you know, just go and watch like the Headfirst Amps videos and learn about what a Marshall amp should sound like. Or, horizontal input JCM 800s can never sound good. Again, I refer you to friend of the podcast, Jason Tong, Headfirst Amps. Like, you know, he can explain why.
Yep.
And like, okay, here's how you could fix it yourself, or send it to me and I'll do it for you. So things like that where, yeah, there's a lot of like, maybe these things were actually fine unmodified and you've just got this thing in your head where it's like, I need to modify it in this way. It's like, hey, the actual, you know, the raw ingredients were pretty good.
It's a thing. It's like, I think forums, like I learned so much years ago on the like Gearspace, right? That was my Gearsluts, but that was my hangout from probably about 2008 to maybe 2012.
Yeah. You know what it is? You know how they say Twitter, currently known as X?
Yeah.
Gearsluts, currently known as Gearspace.
Yeah. But like I found at the time, like that was, this was pre everybody having a YouTube channel so you could work out how to mix a song. So you could delve through. I reckon when I joined that website, there may have been like 40 something thousand members on it. And I think the last, and this is a long time ago, it's probably like 200, 500,000 members.
Wow.
It's just, there's like not that many people working professionally in the world to have like that many people on the thing and like continually posting all this sort of stuff. You know, like it's an issue where you can, it would be the same with YouTube now, whereby you could watch a YouTube video. I'm sure I've done it watching like one of Jason's videos or one of John Brown's videos or whoever's videos, where I'm like, I watch it and I regurgitate the information like maybe 80% correctly. So some of it's true, but then there's also a bit of like just misunderstanding, which is kind of dangerous. But I think like back then there was so much of it, like when all you could do is like check these forum posts, and like I feel like the misinformation spread so quickly over that period of time and became like known as fact. It's not dangerous. Like this stuff is not like it's not life and death. Actually, I heard a good phrase today listening to the Back Chat podcast. By the way, we should talk about some footy before we wrap up today.
100%.
But it was Hamish Brayshaw talking about his brother, like obviously Angus retiring. Yeah. But there was just this expression that was like, shit house not fatal. Like, you know, good expression, you know, shit house not fatal. The situations. But anyway.
Explains a lot of gigs that I've done.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the slight tangent there, but otherwise been pretty well on topic. But anyway, like I said, all this the misinformation is not going to kill anybody, but it might make you waste a bunch of money when you probably don't have to. Get you thinking that all of life's problems will be solved if you buy a 1959 Les Paul and nothing else in the world can come close to that, and you actually won't even be able to play guitar if you don't have that specific guitar to play. Like that is very silly. You know, it's all good. You know what's okay, Leon, is you can actually play guitars that are not made in America. Some of them are actually not terrible, if you can believe that.
Ooh.
Controversially.
Jeez, mate. You might have half the internet after you now.
But yeah, it's just...
you get ratioed for that one.
I know. Well, mate, this is on your channel, so you can deal with the consequences.
Yeah, okay. I'll get ratioed.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the amount of times like I've played... Like I've got so many Mexican-made guitars that feel amazing, and I love playing them. And it's just like... And I've played American ones that are also great, but sometimes is the price justified? Maybe not. And same as stuff made in China, and it's like... It doesn't make things worse necessarily. Sometimes components can be cheaper and sometimes it's done to a price point. So there's like, it's not to say that everything is better or the same, but it's certainly not as a blanket rule worse. That's just such dumb old school meaning 2000s knowledge. You know what I mean? Like it's between.
No, that's a very good example, right? Because that was the golden age of forums. Like it's better because it's made in America. Mm-hmm. Okay, now people, I feel like especially with the glut of affordable guitars and people testing them, the guitars are cheap, so most people can buy them. So if you've got a YouTube channel, you can buy one and review it, and the people who are interested in buying one will watch that video a lot. So there's this kind of like, flow-on effect. And you see that with a lot of channels where their niche becomes how good's the cheapest guitar sort of thing, Artist Guitars, who are based in Australia, I think. They obviously get all this stuff manufactured overseas. They have a guitar called the Falcon that's like 270 Australian dollars.
All right.
It's really, I could do a gig with it. It's really good. I've got it I keep it at school as my teaching guitar. I just leave it there and play it every week, and it's really, really nice. So, I mean, $270 wouldn't have bought you anything in Australia in the early 2000s. Maybe a set of strings.
Maybe a Squire.
Yeah, maybe a Squire that was really, really unplayable.
I reckon I couldn't have even bought an Ashton guitar for that much money back then.
Yeah. So now it's, instead of being, hey, and, point of origin, you could argue actually used to mean something. Like it actually did in the 50s and the 60s and like post World War II, where manufacturing knowledge was concentrated in a few places, and, laborers were paid a worthwhile amount. And, there were actual economic factors tied to geography and the particular country that they're living in. Whereas now that's far less the case. And people are more now interested in specs, where it's like, okay, cool. Well, does this have the fingerboard radius that I want? Are they using the materials that I want? It's an emphasis on the quality. Again, the coffee analogy, where are my beans being roasted? Are they a single origin thing? And, you probably have more scope if you're a small builder in a highly developed country with like a decent social safety net, where you can spend 3 months making a guitar and not become homeless. Then you could make the argument that, yeah, they're going to be putting more time into like sourcing the wood and putting time in. There is still that emphasis on quality. So it's not an either or thing here, is what I'm trying to say. But now it's sort of like, well, what are the specs that I want on my guitar? Okay, I'm just going to look for those specs and kind of find the thing that works best for me. Like you've got that road-worn Tele, the Made in Mexico one.
Yep. It's got two of them. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, fantastic guitar.
Yeah, it's awesome.
They don't really make a similarly spec'd, Fender USA don't really make a similarly spec'd one at an affordable price, well, at a price that like a normal person can buy, right? You'd have to go custom shop.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, I guess I bought that guitar because it was either that. Well, I went to the music shop I tried about maybe a dozen Teles before I picked up this specific one. The only reason I was in that specific music shop that day was because they had a 52, what is the American vintage reissue thing, which looked the same. There was a second-hand one in Rockingham, which would have taken me, say, it would have been like a 2-hour round trip to go and buy it. And it was like $2,500. I was like, oh, that's cool. But do I really want to drive all the way to buy this guitar and not like it? So there happened to be that guitar at a local music shop closer, which was a 10-minute drive. I went there. They had the Road Worn sitting next to it that looked identical, and I way prefer the Road Worn. Like, it's weird. It was like, I think at the time I'd watched a Tim Pierce video where he mentioned something about like walking into a music shop and just being really satisfied, grabbing an instrument, playing something, like, oh man, this feels really good. And that guitar, I had such a moment with that when I just grabbed it and I was like, man, everything feels right when I play. And so,
and that's absolutely the upside of third wave guitar gear, right? Because you have so many more options, and you're afforded that ability to just, I guess, not have to overthink it. You just like pick the guitar up and see if it works for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is good. Can I afford it? Yes or no? Done.
Yep.
Rather than, well, you've got 5 possible choices and you just got to choose the least bad one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what it felt like, for growing up in Australia in the early 2000s being into gear. It's like, well, there's not really the guitar that I want, so I'll just choose the one that's sort of closest to it and I'll deal with the downsides.
Yep. Which, yeah, for me was just any guitar Paul Gilbert was playing. but
Yeah.
good
Right.
luck finding those for a reasonable price back then. I still am tempted to buy a couple of those. Buy one of them, like one of the old.
You
like,
still got
90s
your
ones.
PGM, hey?
Yeah, it's a PGM 30, which your old man blocked the. It had a
That's
crappy
right.
Floyd on it, so he blocked
Yep.
it. I loved that guitar. That needs to go to Tim to get a bit of a
Get a bit of love.
yeah. Which speaking of which, like the Plek machine, in terms of like setting guitars up, like
Man.
that's we harp on about like our buddy Tim at Williams Guitars all the time because what did he say once? It's like, and I know he watches these secretly, but it's like it's not rocket science. Like it's some of it is very simple physics and stuff. And it's not. What do you say about there's like no mojo in a guitar? There was
Basically.
yeah. Well, I mean, you can put that on there if you want, but sometimes you like when you scan the guitars with the machine and it tells you exactly what it looks like. You know, that will tell you. You can replicate that if you want to. You know, like if it's a feeling thing with how the strings and why is it fretting out. It's like, well, it's not fucking magic.
I mean, you could go in and get your favorite guitar, have him scan it, look at the exact fret heights and relief and, you know, any kinks in it, and then replicate that on your other guitar if you wanted to. You know, if you don't want a textbook perfect setup, if you like the quirks of whatever you've got, you can also measure that and then apply it to anything else that you like. Which, hey, is good in theory, but like once I got one of my guitars set up there, I was like, bro, do everything. It's amazing, you know? I feel like when you got your Sir, that was like the best setup guitar I'd ever played in my life.
Yep.
And then, yeah, basically everything that comes off that Plek is that good. It's like, this is how this guitar should play. I can just play it now and it's perfectly optimized. And obviously it's like, if I had to use that machine, you know, I would do a far worse job than someone who already has the skills for setting stuff up and refretting. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind, you know what it is for anyone who's into coffee. It's sort of like a lossless grinder or something like that, where you can exactly dial in the grind that you want. I've got a niche 0, and yeah, it's sort of like, oh, it just needs a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. You know, you get that extra little bit of accuracy and precision and repeatability, which is important.
Yep.
I think that's the thing. When you don't have access to things that make stuff really repeatable, that's when mojo becomes a thing, you know, because you're like, oh, this one's just better. You know, I did exactly the same thing, not realizing that the tolerances are so much wider. So you sort of like, you know, the precision isn't there. Whereas if you got something good with like a Plek, well, the tolerances are so much tighter that, yeah, you probably land very, very close every single time.
Yep. And even CNC machines to make guitars, like, geez, talk about reliability. I mean, you can still get bad stuff from that, don't get me wrong, because if stuff's still assembled by hand, there's always human error involved. So that's fine. But it's probably a little bit less human error involved with that than like hand making something. Not to devalue that whatsoever. And there's like, that's an amazing skill. But again, to go back to traditional logic, I'll never play a CNC guitar. It's like the fucking thing is just being cut out of wood. Like, why would that be that much?
Why not get the machine to do those, like, you know, tasks faster and more accurate than doing it by hand, and then still do all the hand, like if you want to like handmade guitar, right? You can still do the rest of it by hand. You're just like streamlining one part of it.
Yep. But maybe maybe we're both completely ignorant on this stuff too. So if that's the case, then I'll take my medicine.
Let us know in the comment section below.
I was going to say too, speakers, because got to shout out the other John Brown, Tojba. Yeah. Which, did you watch his latest video about the governor, the Eminence governor?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Man,
that was pretty interesting.
I immediately tried to go buy one, but you can't get them at the moment. They're out of stock. It's like the funny thing about watching his videos at the moment, which you should all go watch his videos because they're
absolutely
incredible in terms of being like scientific about trying to ascertain what is important about a particular like part of a signal chain, and this being the speaker, and specifically the V30s, and then now variants of those. Like he's done such a comprehensive test. It's all available to watch, and there's like IRs of new stuff that he's making too, which is amazing. But yeah, it's funny. Like some of the variant speakers that he's tested against a V30, of like the best sounding V30, I like kind of prefer the variant speakers, which is really interesting. There's a spike in these in the V30s, which everyone knows about, but it's like that's always just a little mellower in like the Governor or the Warehouse Veteran 30, which I kind of prefer. Which is it's really funny to me. Maybe it's just that like that spike, which I know according to his sets is like around 5K-ish, 6K, but it's sort of, I know there's something in around 3K that I hear in guitar speakers that I don't like very much. So I'm not sure how much that is a difference. By the way, it's like, I'll do a quick tangent. My monitors, when I pushed them back the other day, I ran sweeps, sine wave sweeps right of the room. I've got this oddly flat like frequency response between like 35 and 65 hertz, like incredibly flat. And I won't go into it too much because it can get very nerdy and very boring. But in my testing, like I've always had this thing when I mix where 3K is like, or 3.5K is always just like really piercing to me. And it never really occurred to me that I could do some EQ on the speakers with my audio interface. So I just like notched out a little bit of like 3.5K. And it sounds so much more pleasant to listen to music in this room now. So of all the things, considering I love guitar so much, I don't enjoy guitar sounds on these speakers as much as I did on my Atom A7s.
Isn't that funny?
So anyway, I've mellowed those out a little bit. It sounds kind of cool. So anyway, well, let's just say the next few mixes I do, we'll see if I like them or not. That'll be the great test. So yeah, anyway.
Also, on a thing with that as well, like I used to wear a beanie basically at all times of the day. Someone pointed out to me, which I thought was a really good thing. This was years ago on the channel. They're like, hey, you have that thing covering your ears. Do you reckon that's maybe why everything you dial in is so bright? And I was like, yeah, actually. And sort of took them off and I was like, yeah, I should probably not do this when I'm dialing in a guitar sound.
To be fair, and with all of the respect in the world, Uncle Leon, like, you've always liked a brighter guitar sound since I've known you, pre-beanie.
Yeah. So, I reckon I'm just deaf.
Maybe. Like, but I don't know. I feel like my hearing has changed a lot in the last 6 months. I'm a little bit worried about it.
Right.
I don't have quite as much clarity. I feel like I'm walking around saying, what? A lot more to people. Sometimes I do it just because it's funny, but...
No, I think as well, it's the taste thing plays into it. And over time, it's like knowing where to pull high end out and where to leave it in. Like watching the Head First videos, I was like, oh man, I love that sizzle that a Marshall has now. Whereas like even 3 or 4 years ago, it used to really annoy me that it wasn't super smooth. So I'm sort of like back into that upper hair, just not the like razor blade sound. And you get better at identifying it as well.
You know what's weird about that too is like certain amps, like you just don't have control over that. It's so broad or the frequency is wrong. Like if I'm EQing something in Pro Tools or on a console or whatever, and I've got an actual full parametric EQ where I can find the frequency, adjust the boost and cut, and even the Q value, like that's amazing. That's not what a guitar amp does. It's got a treble control or a presence control, and you don't know what frequencies they're set to. And yeah, that's you're really limited. So yeah, it can take, like my fucking Splawn, man. Like, you know, like I go back and forth on that all the time, whether or not I like the amp or not, because it's so weird to dial in the top end in that thing and the mid range, to be honest. So yeah, anyway, it's kind of funny. I just remember like when we met, just the volume that you would play guitar at just in your bedroom was quite astounding. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a tiny bit of hearing loss because of that. But,
and also Yngwie Malmsteen damaged my ears. Specifically my right one. It will never, like that was an injury, that gig. 100% that first wah that he got in there.
That was the loudest gig I've ever been to. I was talking about that the other day because I went to Metros. Like Yngwie Malmsteen 2006 at Metro City, the first kick drum hit me so hard in the chest that I just about like collapsed. And I remember I had earplugs in for the whole gig, or mostly for the whole gig, because I figured it would be quite loud. But I took it out at one point. I was like, man, it was fucking painful, man. It was terrifying. So,
Like, there's a guy who's also probably a bit deaf.
yeah, have you ever listened to his music? I'm kidding.
Yeah, you go, hey, brodunch. Apparently Ace Frehley is very, very deaf as well.
Oh.
Like, you know, probably whatever the legal qualification for
Like
being-
disability.
Yeah. And, you know, here I am just like, oh, yeah, deaf people. You know, I do realize that I am speaking very broadly about an entire thing related to
hearing loss.
people's hearing. So
It can
hearing loss.
It's a huge spectrum, man. Like
Yeah.
you and I are mid-30s. Like it's like absolutely a fact that we have hearing loss because of our age. Like for people that don't know, you lose roughly like 2 kilohertz of your hearing every 10 years. So as you get older, like, and that's
There you
from,
go.
I think from maybe the age of 20-ish. And you can do this experiment if you feel like it. It's not, you can do it quite easily with a signal generator or an oscillator. Like set
Yeah.
that to 20 kilohertz and then just decrease it slowly until you start to hear a high frequency. I remember doing that in 2007 when I was still studying, and I reckon I could hear about 18.2K. And again, I was
Yeah,
like,
right. Interesting.
that was at 19. And I did that same experiment with my students last year. And I don't know, maybe 15K is where it's, or 16K is where it started to kick in. Because I'm,
Yep.
you know, just getting older. So, like, I think I said this to you, but like, I mastered a live album for our buddies in Chaos Divine. I did that at the end of last year. So
Cool.
And they did this live album at Badlands. And our buddy Simon mixed it. They asked me to master it. So anyway, mastered the whole thing. Relatively smooth. It was well recorded and well mixed. That was all cool. But I was showing my TAFE students, and it was really funny because I was just going through the process of how I might process stuff and whatever. And I just said, oh, and they've got this cover of Africa, Toto Africa. And I played the song to them. And one of my students was like, and Noah, I don't know if you listen to this, but some of the other ones do, but Noah was like, man, there's this like high frequency, like it's really painful. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And anyway, he was just, he could swear, he could hear it. I opened the session up again the next day on my computer at the studio, and I was just like, I'm just going to investigate this a little bit. And sure enough, there was this massive spike, like 10 dB spike at like 18K, 19K, somewhere around there.
Wow.
Only in that. So I looked through the rest of the album, and it wasn't anywhere else. It was only in the Africa cover. And I messaged Simon. I said, hey man, look, there's this weird thing, and I didn't hear it. Thankfully, my student did. And he went through and checked it, and it was on one of the keyboard patches in that song, the keyboard parts. And he's like, shit, I had no idea. So he just pulled that down. I was able to, like, I could have just done it in the mastering session.
Wow.
But he just rebounced it with that, pulled out the keyboards, and it was just a little bit cleaner. So it's so weird. But again, like I have now 35 or 36-year-old ears, and someone with 20-something-year-old ears is going to hear things differently. It's just the way of it.
Yeah, that's really where the kind of, you know, and I mean, we already have these tools, right? Like Isotope and a bunch of other companies, but it's like this so-called like AI assisted thing where, you know, yeah, you can augment your own, I guess even like the pre-AI stuff, like just having tools that can measure frequency response so that you can also have a back, like, you know, you can mix something to sound good, but you can be like, oh, am I missing anything because of my hearing loss?
Yeah.
It was funny. We had a guy on Roto, Dane was his name, drummer, and he did sound, and he was fantastic. And Cam was kind of saying, he's like, yeah, drummers make the best sound guys. And my theory was that it's because guitar players make the worst ones. Sorry, mate.
Thanks.
But you're a guitar player who can sing, though. So you got it's as a guitar player, you spend so much time listening to guitar that you lose, like, you damage your ears in that very specific guitar band. So you always make stuff too loud. So, like, you know, never trust a guitar player to mix guitars, sort of thing.
See,
But yeah,
I would suggest that your drummer saying that drummers make the best sound guys is because your drummer heard a drum sound that he liked.
And is a drummer?
Yeah. That would be my assessment.
I think he's just had some good experiences with drummers mixing his drums well.
Yeah,
The other
because
theory,
they're drummers, so they know how to get a drum sound.
Yeah,
but
the other theory is just that, like, well, a guitar player is going to focus on the guitars because they know that sound. A drummer's going to make the drum sound good easily because they know what they're doing. And also, if you think of like the range of timbres in a drum kit, there's a lot of little detailed things, and different people hear different stuff. You know. Anyway, that was just a total. I'm definitely like damaged in the guitar frequency from just playing Marshalls at like full tilt in my bedroom as a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's a bad idea. Like, you know, I'm sure people are also damaging their hearing just using like plugins on in-ears cranked up as well. So, you know, the problem just moves around.
Man, like, because I've used in-ears a little bit, obviously, but I really don't know how much, like when I've mixed in-ears for other people, you really just don't know how loud stuff is. There's no control over it. I hate mixing doing headphone mixes for people in the studio as well. Same deal. Like I like for them to have headphone mixes so they can check the volume themselves, like do the volume themselves. But you never know
what it is.
What
headphones, like in-ears, are the vaping of this generation of musicians hearing loss. You know, we were the last generation on Durries.
Yep.
And now, but these kids vaping, they don't know what they're getting into or how bad we knew the damage we were causing, and we accepted the risk.
Just tell people that aren't from Australia what durries are, so they understand.
Cigarettes. Yeah. So that's a durry. Smoke a durry.
Yeah. Do you reckon
durry?
Adam Neely did that video about in-ears and how it's something about it's the best time you can ever do music because you can hear what other people are doing? Like, do you reckon he vapes? He looks like he'd vape.
I mean, look. You know, that guy's got some opinions about some things that he's perfectly entitled to, and he's quite an intelligent guy. But also, there's some stuff where it's like, all right, bass player, stop talking.
He probably thinks bass players make the best sound guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, so to be honest, to typecast any type of musician as being good at something, bass players do make pretty good mix engineers. In like anecdotally,
and the bass player as the MD is a thing as well.
Yep.
I think basically because people go, you're not really doing anything, you know. So can you just do some more jobs? And they're like, bro, I have to play a fundamentally important instrument in music. Like, you know, you will never get a gig. You'll never get like a band gig without a bass player, but gigs without guitar players and keyboards and stuff, that's fine.
Yep.
People like that. But you take the bass out, Troy. And what are you doing with life?
It's funny because I'd say like, you know, for traditional like pop and rock music, right? The only thing that really matters is the vocal, and everything else is just incidental. But they clearly do the least amount of work and don't know what's going on ever. But isn't that funny? Like, no idea.
I had a singer. This was recently who said, "Oh, how do I plug a microphone in?" And my response to them was like, you're obviously doing well where you've never had to deal like the level of show that you're involved with is obviously you're doing well enough where this you can pay someone to do this for you.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it.
Well,
and also I was like, well, that goes in the hole and the hole they go in the other hole and you're done and you turn the fader up. They were like, okay, I've just learned something.
I've worked with a singer a lot who has sworn up and down that if you showed them how to do open heart surgery 3 times, they would be able to nail it. That same singer, every single time he has to plug in a like an iPod cable, he asks me which hole does it go into.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it was funny because it's like he still does it, but he used to do it on one of those, you know, the desks that have the RCA inputs. So it says there's a set for inputs, there's like a red and a white one for inputs and a red and a white one for outputs. And is like, which one does it go into? Input or output? And still, after months, years, cannot work out the difference. So,
you could always perform a very simple experiment here. Just see what happens.
I do feel for people. Like this makes sense to me now because of so much time doing it. But input, output, send, return, all these sort of things can get really confusing. The terminology of it can, because like, you know, technically, well, you know, if you see something that says output, you can associate that with the output of the thing that you're plugging into it.
Yeah.
But obviously, That's not what it means. It means you want to plug something into the input of something, and then you take the output of something into the input of something else. That's just kind of how it works around.
I mean, you could easily say, well, this is just, unfortunate, but mate, we still have these conventions in like physics where, you could make the argument, when you look at like the positive and negative terminal and like how electric current flow is notated is actually incorrect.
Right.
It's like, there's the intuitive way being like, if this is explained to you, you'd be like, oh, cool. So obviously it points in the direction the electrons go because they're the thing we're interested in, or the charge aligns itself. You're like, no, other way. Because that's just how it is. We've been trained to say that. Yep. So, there is that sort of convention. But yeah, without this becoming too much of a tangent about stereotypes around instrumentalists and non-instrumentalists, what was the point?
Singers, shit.
Third wave gear.
Bass players,
everyone's rubbish.
Shit. Drummers, shit. Keyboard players,
guitarists,
shit. Guitar players. Yep.
Maybe okay.
Rory's been doing the condescending thumbs up.
Has he?
Yeah, it's really funny. Well, I don't know if we've talked about it, but this here, like, I know it's not a real thumbs up. It's just a thumb. It's a thumb pointing. But I find that's really. Hey, Troy, how you going today? I just give him one of these ones. You can see it on the video. You can't see it otherwise. Just it's been taken off. People are doing it. People are enjoying it.
It's slowly marinating,
Leon, good
like
podcast.
squid rings. Yeah, good podcast, bro. Yeah. So in summary, like, do you think we actually know more now than people knew in like the late 70s or the early 90s? And when I say we, I mean like the seething mass of guitar players who walk into a store and maybe want to buy something.
I would say yes, but I think if you're talking about 100% of the community, no. It's probably whereas maybe 10% knew before, I'd say like maybe 30% know now, which is a positive.
Do you think it translates into like a functional, like, here's the thing, let's maybe say like, and obviously when you've got these like large scale things with people, it's never perfect, but like say like nutrition, like, or say smoking. Let's say smoking. Most people know that like you smoke cigarettes, like you're going to have very, very bad health outcomes eventually if you do it, right? That has been like drubbed into our heads.
Yep.
Is there an equivalent with like the average musician when it comes to like, I mean, most people now wear headphones and earplugs. Like that seems to be.
Yeah.
Or is that just the 10 people I spend time around with over the course of a year?
I don't know.
Maybe
man.
not.
Do you know when I was at uni, that was it's still a big deal now, but I remember people said like, oh yeah, if you're ever at a gig, just go to the bar and you'll be able to get headphones because it's part of OH&S. Do you know how many times? No, I swear back then that was actually true. And 9 times out of 10, I'd be able to get a set of headphones. But these days, absolutely not. They don't have them provided for punters. They should. Like,
you know what, Troy? If we cared, that'd be such a little, thing to get pushed through. Like every bar should. Actually, I'm going to argue every bar should, because remember the bar has to provide you with water.
Yep.
Like that wasn't always a thing. Oh, you got to buy a bottle. No, it's a similar thing. Like you got to give people water at the bar when they ask, because it's like a fundamental human right. And like headphones, earplugs, like, you should just have a massive thing, at least for your staff. Because the number of times I see like bar staff not wearing headphones, and it's just like, bro,
it's brutal.
You do this too long, you just outcomes are not good.
And do you know what's funny too is like how many times have you had to do an induction for like let's say a casino or a stadium perhaps, and there's a big thing. It's like, or any job, it's like you go through full OH&S inductions, and it's like, what are the hazards and risks? It's like, well, tripping hazards and electricity and stuff. And you're in a venue, maybe hearing, maybe that's an important one. Yet no one does anything about it. So hey, let's maybe get onto that. We'll contact Roger Cook. And like WWE's just been in town. That was sweet. So next thing.
Oh yeah, actually.
Rog.
Look, third wave gear in the bin. Give me the 2 or 3 minute thing on how you enjoyed WWE.
Oh yeah. Oh well, we pretty much
In
wrapped up
Perth.
the other thing, right? Because that was a cool
Yeah.
topic. Like I think it's interesting. I am
I'd
really
be
keen
curious
to
to
hear.
know what people think about this.
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of so WWE came to Perth like on Sunday. Oh, sorry, Saturday. Which meant that all the wrestlers in Australia were in town for it. Or not all of them, a lot of them. So it was a big independent show on Friday night. I just love wrestling, man. You know that. Some
Yep.
people love to go see a gig. I love to go see wrestling. Some people find that really funny, but I don't really get that much out of a live gig anymore. I've seen plenty of them. They are cool. I like when I play gigs because I'm the one that's making the noise. But otherwise,
What would the Iron Sheik say to the people who disagree with your position on wrestling?
I'm not going to do the voice, but he just call him a jabroni. And
Yeah.
but no, it was. I just find wrestling shows cool because they're slightly less loud. You can sit down. You can still, if you want to get a beer, you can do that too. Generally fun environment, so it's cool. WWE though was awesome. It's a pretty long show, mate. You know it was awesome. Like, did you see all of the stuff over the last like 2 or 3 weeks where it's like Americans complaining, not complaining, but being confused where you park when you go to a stadium? Because, you know, Taylor Swift's over East at the moment.
Yep.
And there's all these shots of the MCG and people are like, well, where are you supposed to park your car? And same as, Optus Stadium, like, where are you supposed to park your car? Firstly, when I do the Dockers games, I park underneath the stadium because
Exactly,
I have
yeah.
hookup. But when I went to see WWE, I got on a train at Whitford Station.
Yep.
It took about 40 minutes to get to the stadium with a couple of stops, obviously, maybe less than that, 35 minutes. I got off at the stadium, walked in, and then at the end of the show, got back on the train, 40 minutes, 30 minutes back to Whitford Station, and then drove from there. It was amazing. Like, I actually couldn't believe
Hey,
how easy it was.
where do you drive your car in New York City, bro?
Yeah. So it's
You
actually,
know,
it's
where do you park your car when you're not driving it? Like, you know, you live in an apartment. Do they have like, come on, you know, their public transport? I get that it's not a thing in Middle America because Middle America was
and Los Angeles as well.
and Los Angeles where it's like, yeah, you know, the without sounding as like conspiratorial as I look, it's like, yeah, the people with the money who built those things had vested interests in there not being public transport.
Yeah, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I thought that was just like fact. They took.
Well, yeah, but to some people, I will sound as mad as someone who thinks that, you know, the Egyptians couldn't work granite. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah,
it is the internet after all.
That's
you may
true.
have arrived at the Gear Podcast from one of those videos.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But no. Anyway,
the
show was.
Tell
good.
me about your flat Earth adventures.
Yeah. The show was awesome though. It sounded really good. There was a girl from Adelaide headlined it too. She's the biggest deal in wrestling at the moment.
Crushed
so
it.
That was cool. Yeah, I had a really good time. So
Can we just appreciate how funny it is that she's from Adelaide?
I know. It's
Like,
awesome.
The most boring city on the Australian continent.
Is it the most
The most
thing is,
boring capital city.
You and I both agree that obviously the worst capital city is probably Melbourne because it's in Victoria, and that's obviously the worst state in Australia. Because of
for that regard, yes, but I also, you know,
Carlton Football Club, Collingwood Football
If I wasn't
Club.
going to live in Perth, I'd live in Melbourne. It is.
Nah.
It has its. I quite like it.
Nah.
You know, even though Carlton is there.
Yeah, Collingwood.
But mate,
wrong. Western Bulldogs.
better than
boo.
Sydney.
Probably. I'd probably rather live there than Sydney.
Look, I always tell myself like Sydney's awesome, and then I go there, and Sydney's like Kalgoorlie. You spend 3 days there, and you're like, this is fun.
Yep.
And after about 3 days, you're like, get me out of here. This is mental. Why? You know. This is all tongue in cheek for anyone unacquainted with the concept of sarcasm, like mostly tongue in cheek, 95%.
You know, the wrestling show I saw on Friday night, the main event was WA wrestling versus Victorian wrestling 4-on-4 tag match.
Oh, right. State of Origin.
State of Origin.
Bring
yeah.
it back for footy, man.
It was State of Origin. It was awesome. So, yeah. It's funny, like, is it really just because of the football that I feel like we're so antagonistic to Victorians? Is that there's no other reason, right? My granddad.
And it's also cultivated in the Western Australian media. Like, we have this like chip on our shoulder about the bloody eastern states, which, come on, man, like it's not really a thing. You know, if you look at when you delve into it, you're like, actually, the Eagles have a sick schedule. You know, it's like, yeah, they travel a lot, but you know, people still have to travel here to play them, and
but
there's a lot of perks. Still, I do love when they win the flag because it's like,
yeah.
Collingwood had 20 games in a row at the MCG and you lost. Go Dom Sheed.
Yeah, did you see someone had a Dom Sheed poster at the WWE?
That was the best. Like
there was some Eagles jerseys as well out. No Dockers ones, funnily enough. But yeah, I was going to say my granddad, till the day he died, just like hated with a fiery passion Victoria. To be fair, he hated Fremantle as well, which is just like 40 minutes from where he grew up. He grew up in Midland in WA. But it was very territorial. So I still carry a bit of that because I grew up 20 years living with the man, and so I kind of have a bit of like residual hatred based on nothing. But
look,
there's got to be you got to hate someone, right?
Sport is very important in a society because you need to hate something really passionately.
Yep.
You know, this is a position that is not just my own. I've heard a lot of other people say this, where it's like, especially like think of like American football or baseball or something in the States, like people have their team, but they also have the team that they hate passionately. And it's like, you watch a game against them and you get that out of your body and you don't then go and like have to, you know, take it out on some like other, you know, group of people. You just do it to that sport, that very well paid sports team.
Yep.
You just really get into, you know, hating the Carlton Football Club or Collingwood.
Yep.
And you just rage for that 2 hours. And then you go and live the rest of your life in peace.
Man, I'm back on football media again. It's just kicked up again like this week. Podcasts are
season
out.
starts in what, 2 weeks?
It's pretty exciting. Yeah, maybe it's next weekend, like round 0.
Yeah, actually.
Round
Mate,
zero, you'll be able to watch GWS Collingwood. That'll be fun.
That'll be I'm looking forward to GWS's media people.
Oh, they're the best.
They are in a league of their own.
You know, I was going to say I actually watched the overtime of the Super Bowl the other week in my sickness.
Oh yeah.
Which I have no idea how that sport works. So they literally won the game, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." They crossed. They did something, and then I felt like the immediate celebration over the next like 10 seconds were not enough for me to understand that they'd won. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, you've got like think about Dom Sheed kicks that goal and the eruption of the MCG, and then the commentators, like you think of BT, he's got the most impossible goal. You know,
I always just think
none
of
of that.
BT calling the 2016 grand final. Boyd picks it up. Boyd, fuck, he's kicked the goal.
Oh god, it's so good.
If anyone wants to look up Tom Boyd 2016 and just listen to Brian Taylor say fuck on national TV.
Yep. You know what they had to do?
It's so good.
I didn't realize this at the WWE show. They had to they just blacked out the screens for a minute. It's because like they were apparently, well, I was there, but I didn't quite catch this. They booed off like one of the wrestlers, but they were giving him the finger as he was going out, so they had to like
that's
black
funny.
the screens on TV. It was quite funny. Anyway, mate,
that's great.
Is that probably enough for today?
That's more than enough for today,
Now-
Troy. The next time I speak to you, I will be with our Trans-Tasman neighbours. Trans-Tasman neighbours.
So what are you doing, mate? Are you going to take are you taking laptop and a little recording thing with you, or are you
Yeah, I'll have a bit of my rig over there. So have
you got a room to yourself? You got to share?
I believe it's like a 2-bedroom apartment. So poor Joe Southwell will have to put up with me for 3 weeks.
Oh,
but
lucky
yeah,
Joe.
own room and stuff like that, shed, you know, little kitchenette and things like
Oh,
that. Which
we can talk to
it
Joe.
Looks pretty good.
Let's talk to Joe on the pod.
Exactly.
We can talk
should.
about the time that you completely didn't know who he was.
I forgot about that until now. That's amazing.
Yeah, he walked
Amazing.
up. Amazing bass player. Great dude. Joe just walked straight up to Leon at a gig probably 10 years ago. Oh, hey, Leon, how's it going? He's like, yeah, hey, mate. Like, Leon just continued.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, hey, mate. Yeah, continue looking at your phone like this. It's very funny.
I'll never live that one down. I must remind him of that. So yeah, it'll be good fun. We'll continue the pod and people can see some little travel vlog stuff, and I'll do a rig rundown and things like that. And yeah, until then, this has been yet another episode 49 of the Gear Podcast.
20
we'll see you for number 50
20
next
till the
week.
magic episode. Peace, everybody. Good job.
See you, dudes.